Greetings! My name is Ben Brode, and I have a topic I wanted to discuss because I did a video recently on the new player experience and power creep. And I read a lot of the comments on that video and noticed, first of all, some great suggestions for ways we can approach those problems, which I super appreciate. But also a comment that I saw again and again, which was, you talk a good talk, Brode, but then you go ahead and print Ice Rager and Evil Heckler and Dr. Boom, and those are strictly better than cards that already exist in the game. That's like direct power creep, and you didn't have to do that. So what's going on? I think that's a good point, and I wanted to discuss why we do that and what we were thinking. In order to do that, the first thing I wanted to note about all three of those comparisons is that all of them are cards in expansions that are better than a basic card. And that's an important distinction because for us, basic cards are in a really weird space. They're very different than every other card in the game because they have a lot more roles than every other card in the game. Basic cards are what we give you when you first start playing Hearthstone. It's our kind of introductory, welcome to Hearthstone, here's what card games are like. A lot of the people who come playing Hearthstone, they've never played a card game before, and it is somewhat daunting. And so we have to kind of ease in those players and then layer complexity and things like secrets and Wind Fury and triggered powers and things like that. We layer those things on in expansion content, in the classic set and in other sets beyond that. But the basic set, if you just read through the basic set cards, they are incredibly simple. They're cards like deal 6 damage, or taunt, or just what we call a vanilla minion, one that has no card text. And we keep those cards incredibly simple to be that very slow learning curve for new players. So that we have that very big burden of complexity for the basic set, for brand new players. So when you think about those new players, and if you imagine the perfect new player experience, what you want players to feel like, and how you want to layer all the different nuance of Hearthstone to them over time, one of the things that hooks players the most, and we see players playing the game and they're like, ooh, this seems really fun, I think I'll play more. The moments where they feel some form of progression. So the second that a player finishes the tutorial, plays a practice game, and then sees the XP bar fill, they're like, oh, you can level up? And it draws you into the game. You're like, there's goals now all of a sudden. You start feeling more powerful as you earn new cards. And that feeling of increasing in power is really compelling. And so if we start you off and your very first deck contains cards like Magma Rager, which for a while was had the distinct honor of being the very worst card in the game, and then you open up a new card, a better card in an expansion, you're like, oh, I'll take out Magma Rager, I'll put in this better card, I feel like just more powerful. I feel like I've increased in power and I'll do better. And that feeling, that emotional response to progression is super powerful and makes the game really fun. And, eventually there isn't as much of a feeling of progression as far as power. You progress through levels and earn golden cards. Once you've got enough cards to build a deck that you're excited about, you're just opening more options to build different kinds of decks. That's cool, but that very beginning of your Hearthstone experience, that feeling of progression is pretty important. So we want some of the basic cards to be really bad, to help make that feeling of progression even stronger. But some people pointed out that those cards are actually making it unfair for new players. New players are losing because of that. And actually, new players are losing because they're for more reasons than just that. They just don't have the skill. There's a lot of things you have to learn about Hearthstone, from building a deck to the concepts of tempo and card advantage and value, and there's lots of pieces to becoming good at Hearthstone, understanding the meta, what your opponent might do next turn. So the cards in your deck actually are not the biggest reason why new players aren't winning a lot of games. But there's lots of basic cards that we give you, and you shouldn't be playing Magma Rager even if we did give it to you, or even if we gave you Ice Rager or something. You probably shouldn't be playing it even as your first decks that you're building. We do give new players incredible cards. We give new players True Silver Champion, Fireball, Frostbolt, Flame Strike, Consecrate, and that's definitely intentional. We want players to have some great cards, and we want high-level decks to include basic cards also. So that's just because there are bad cards in the basic set doesn't mean that we're trying to make sure we give players really bad cards to start out with. That's not our intention. But we do also want them to feel a feeling of progression and to learn what cards I put in my deck, and there's some good choices, some bad choices, and some of them are obvious actually at the beginning of the new player experience, and that's important to have some obvious choices, because deck building is certainly not obvious to new players. When they get into the deck builder, it's there's a lot of cards, and deciding which 30 go into your deck, a lot of people do really badly. In fact, actually, when we did some analytics, new players who built their own decks did worse than if they just said, build me a random deck, and let that do it for them. They would end up winning more. So it's actually something that new players really struggle with, and we want to make that have some ways where you can learn how to do that better, just kind of hidden in the cards set when you're looking through your deck and trying to figure out what to add to it. And how this all relates to power creep is that when you see cards like Magma Rager and an Ice Rager, it looks like we just made a card that's strictly better, and so it's more powerful. Isn't that power creep? To me, it's not necessarily power creep. To me, you can tell if power creep is occurring if the decks that people are playing, if the meta gets more powerful. It's kind of the output of power creep, is that people are playing more powerful decks. So just because we made a card that's more powerful, if it doesn't get played in any decks in the meta, it actually had no effect on the overall power level of the game. And so I don't believe that cards like Ice Rager are actually do represent any actual power creep. Now, Dr. Boom is better than War Golem, and Dr. Boom actually does represent power creep. He is being played a lot in high-level decks, and you see him a lot, and so his existence has increased the power level of the game, but it has nothing to do with War Golem. War Golem could not exist, and he would still get played at high level in high-level decks. War Golem is bad, and it's just because he's bad. It has nothing to do with Dr. Boom. They shouldn't necessarily be looked at through a lens together. Dr. Boom doesn't represent power creep because War Golem exists. War Golem is just bad and was never played, and so it wasn't like people took out War Golem for Dr. Boom. If you think about it, if we have a cool idea for a card, and it's a 3-mana 5/1, and it's got some benefit, it's like, got stealth or some other cool thing, the question is, should we be allowed to make that card? And I think the answer is yes. We should be able to explore new versions of basic cards because they're so bad. There's lots of room here to explore lots of other designs with those stats with some upside. And so just because we made Ice Rager or Evil Heckler, it doesn't actually mean that we are power creeping the game. Those new cards don't get played anyway. It's just that we're exploring new space. We're trying new card designs out, and it's okay that they're better than basic cards. Basic cards have a really specific role. They're really working at building the simplicity and progression feeling for new players. So anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into basic cards as to how we perceive basic cards, the role that we imagine they play for new players for Hearthstone, and how even though we make strictly better versions of those in expansions, it doesn't really necessarily represent power creep. I hope this is a good insight into the way we think about cards and basic cards and power creep, and I'm going to do some more videos soon that cover even crazier topics than basic cards. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.